possibly cut it down into blocks of 30 minutes. That is enough for most sleep deprived mums or mums that are getting sort of sleep disturbance. But if you get 40 minutes, brilliant, because it gives you a little bit of time to warm up as well. But shift your mindset about the amount of time that you have to exercise for. Also, in terms of the type of exercise that you do, choose this wisely. So a lot of mums that I know will be sort of training for aesthetic reasons, you know, maybe their body fat's increased and they're trying to strip some body fat, which is a fine, acceptable goal, you know, and I completely understand it. What the marketing that's pushed towards mums is that the best way to do this is HIIT training. It's still there, it's not going away. It's one of the worst things that you can do as a sleep deprived mum is to try and do HIIT training. For so many reasons, you need to think about is what the recovery is going to be like. If you're doing proper HIIT training, the recovery is hard. For me, I'm pretty well conditioned, I'm pretty strong, I'm fairly fit, and HIIT training smashes me. So if you're sleep deprived, it's just not a good style of training to take on. Maybe down the line, maybe, you know, once every blue moon, if you are chasing that high heart rate and all that kind of stuff. But I would keep HIIT training as kind of down there on your list of priorities in terms of the type of training that you should be doing. I advocate strength training for women because we need it for our hormones, for our bones, for our health. The best way to achieve most aesthetic goals, it's your starting point. It just takes a little bit longer because you've got to stick to the program. For me to force on exercise types on you, but what I would say is whatever exercise type you choose, you've got to be able to recover from it. If you're not recovering from it, you are not benefiting from it. Because exercise is not about how well you train in that session, it's about how well you recover from that session. And so that's where seeking the advice of a trainer would help. But think about time that you're exercising for and the type of training. Keep HIIT at the bottom, favour strength training. If you're strength training in general, you need to be thinking about some kind of periodization. So you need to be thinking about increasing very, very gradually whatever weights you're lifting or the reps or whatever, and then having some level of regression in that as well, but also some time out where you're deloading or you're having a bit of a rest week or whatever. If you're sort of favouring running or that sort of you're more of a cardio type person, again, I would really think about the length of time that you're going for. Are you getting faster? Are you feeling stronger? And after the aftermath, how is your body feeling? You know, if you're constantly walking around with aches and stiff and that DOMS feeling or that, you know, that muscle stiffness, these are all signs that your body's not recovering. So change the type of exercise that you do if you need to. Seek advice from a professional personal trainer, but also really think about the length of time. Think about the rest within your exercise sets as well. So if you're doing some kind of exercise where it's like go from one to the next, 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 again, that heart rate's all the way up here. Don't forget, exercise releases stress hormones, and we want those stress hormones just at the right amount. Stress hormones are good if you manage them well and you get them in the right amount. If it's like stress after stress after stress after stress, exercise done, go to your kid's stressing you out, going to sleep, wake up all the time, that's just a body which is just about to implode with the stress, okay? We don't want that at all. So you've got to think about the exercise that you're doing. You want to be able to go for it, do your lift, do your running, do whatever it is that you're doing, but also we need a rest. I'm not talking a 20-second rest, I'm talking like we need to be walking around and heart rate come down, and you know, feeling like we are ready to go and able to produce the same amount of performance throughout that half an hour to make it count. So start thinking about, you know, if you're doing a lift, for example, it's not just about can I lift that same weight and then until I'm sort of collapsed on the floor, in which personal trainers speak is that we would be going to failure. So you're almost getting to the point where it's like last rep is like, oh, you know, I'm done. You know, we don't want to be doing that very often at all. I'm not saying this is black and white, but what I'm saying is as a regular routine in your exercise, You don't want to be going to failure in your training all the time. Again, it's just too fatiguing for the body, for the nervous system, and it's something which is not manageable, and you won't recover from it if you've got disrupted sleep. We want to be feeling and finishing every set, if we can, as strong as possible, and ready to go again into that next set as strong as possible. Okay, so that's about your sort of the type of exercise that you do. That I really advocate is just women working well with the hormones. So a lot of us women were terrible for just not necessarily working with our bodies in the natural way that we're meant to. So for example, women and the men training the same, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, we can train in the same exercises, of course we can, but what men obviously don't have that women do is our hormonal cycle. Now, throughout certain times of the month, you are going to have a greater injury risk than other times of the month. Before your period, when you're ovulating, for example, you're going to feel more tired, and your endurance and your tolerance for exercise might change. And your recovery is going to also change. Hunger signals are going to also change. Women at certain times of the month are going to feel more hungry because of our hormonal cycle. And we should be eating more during that time. And that's why if you're following a strict low-calorie diet on the same amount of calories, and you're not taking into consideration that hormone week where you're dying, you can eat your own arm, then you're only asking for trouble. So start looking at your cycle, start tracking it. But start thinking about times of the month where you're going to pull back on exercise, times of the month where you're going to go again. Now, you can look at the science of this, but my body actually does something slightly different from what the science says. And I know my body very well now in terms of my cycle. So what I would do is look at the science and, ovulation week, menstruation week, blah, blah, blah. But also track yourself. Am I recovering from my run during that week versus last month versus the month before? Hormonally, what we know about disrupted sleep is that it can obviously have an influence in terms of your mood. And there's no question about it. First thing in the morning, my mood is on the floor. If I was to fill in a depression and anxiety questionnaire when you first woke me up with that toddler hitting me in the face, I'd score like literally cart this woman off because she needs help. Being woken up by a young child when you don't want to be woken up and you're in the middle of a sleep cycle maybe is hormonally not very good, and it produces more stress hormones. But the other thing to be aware of is that during certain times of the morning, you are going to release cortisol because that's how we get up, and it's normal, it's natural. Obviously then we might have another layer of that going on. So start thinking about how you manage that mood in the morning. Now, the best tip I have for this is to acknowledge that it is normal for you to feel a surge of stress at a certain time in the morning. With that knowledge, knowing that will pass, because it's the way the body works. You're not going to stay constantly heightened once you start moving and the daylight hits and you see that it's daytime. So just knowing that your mood is going to change within the next half an hour is, it's a pick-me-up, because it's like, I feel awful right now, but I know as soon as I stand up, it's like once you've had your first cup of tea or whatever, things start looking a bit brighter again. So during that time, like as soon as you can, realistically, because I know this is easier for some than others, but as soon as you can in the morning, show your face to daylight. And this is something which I have been doing for quite a long time now. Even when it was like there was no daylight at all, I'd be like outside in the dark. Please, come on. Hormonally, this will do your body so much good, but it will really lift your mood and it will just help you feel a little bit more energized. So as soon as you can get your ass outside, get your ass outside. Even if it's 5 minutes of just standing in the garden with your kid and your kid's digging in the hole again, or whatever, show your face to the sun, the daylight, the clouds, whatever, but show your body this is a shift from night to day, because this is all about good hormones kicking in. on that note, everyone knows I'm a coffee lover. I'm all about caffeine, but I'm also all about using caffeine wisely, smartly, and when it counts. So caffeine is a brilliant pre-workout. Every pre-workout in the book will have caffeine in it. You don't need all that other shit that they put in the cans if you don't want to, and they're really expensive. The cheapest, purest, best pre-workout in the world is a shot of espresso. What you don't want to do though is obviously overload your nervous system with caffeine, because that is not a good thing when you're sleep deprived. Your nervous system is already a little bit twitchy, let's say. Okay, so with, and again, I can tag people underneath that I've learned this stuff from, but also, again, it's from personal experimentation. I always found if I have a coffee first thing in the morning, I was much more jittery. It was having an impact on me in a way which I wasn't quite sure about. Whereas actually, if I left it for an hour or two, then caffeine actually was naturally at the right time. And that's because you have cortisol already in your system in the morning. So what we don't want to do is overload the body. Don't forget, caffeine is a stimulant. So save your caffeine for 30 minutes, 25 minutes.